How are things in the world of Rockland business?
Thank you for that very lovely intro.
No problem.
They are dynamic. It may seem like we're in a quiet time of the year, but there's always something going on. And we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some interesting developments about development. Specifically and also universally. So specifically, I'm going to back my way into talking about the HNA property down in Palisades on Route 9W. That's the HNA Center. We have talked about it before. It is exactly 1 year to the date that
Actually, people may actually more commonly know it as the Palisades Conference Center or the IBM Palisades Conference Center. That's what it was for many, many years.
That is right. And though HNA had bought it and had run it as a hotel through Dolce, yes, people still say that's the old IBM Center, right? And we say right. That property, 106-acre, very, very important property to Palisades and Orangetown. A year ago, the Orangetown Town Board picked a developer, tapped a developer to redevelop that site. It was two gentlemen out in California who came forward and beat out a couple of other contestants to win that.
Yeah, it begins.
Yeah, okay. And so what we've learned and what we are publishing today is a story that they are looking to purchase that property for $33 million, but that they are also out seeking capital up to $38 million on that property. And it is just unclear, although we have obtained their request for capital, and we have some very specific details in our story, which you can read later when we post it. What becomes unclear as it reaches the 1 year mark is whether or not they have any of their own financing, any of their own investors, or whether they're out entirely seeking, as their request for capital indicates, $38 million. And why this is important, and why we're going to go into a larger context for a moment, is there are many kinds of development, but what we're seeing in the county in some cases are the towns involving themselves and steering the future of development on certain very large sites, like the HNA or the former IBM site, like the Letchworth site up in Stony Point, and like the Chair Factory site in the village of Haverstraw. In these three cases, we see administrations inserting themselves and steering the potential success or potential failure of these projects. And so that is very different than where you have, say, just private development, and there is no town involvement whatsoever. So, for example, in Clarkstown, Clarkstown has spent some 10 years trying to rezone what they call the transit-oriented development, which is around the train station and the commercial center of the hamlet of Nanuet. And the idea there has been, it's been a sort of a fallow area that has so much potential, particularly because it's near the train station, and the town has done a lot of rezoning there in an effort to attract a developer. Despite that, we still haven't seen any development yet, but now the town has gone back to the drawing board again to do some further rezoning, to reconsider and rethink some of the density. In other words, to take some of the same number of housing, but to put it in denser clusters in order to incentivize a particular landowner there who potentially might become that developer. In the case of Stony Point, for example, we saw the town's involvement when last year or whenever that was, when Raja Mar, the years start to they drip together. When Raja Mar was hoping, a local resident there was hoping to redevelop that site, and the town endorsed this and got involved. And it ended up there was opposition that came through with a narrowly defeated referendum. And once again, the town has come back with yet a new but qualified developer who's looking to do senior housing there. Once again, you've got this balance of the town working with developers to try to, in this case, to deal with town-owned land. The difference with the HNA site, of course, is that, and similarly, let's just mention, and we have reported on, Michael Kohut and his administration's involvement on the Village of Havishaw's waterfront with the proposed redevelopment, ambitious redevelopment of the Chair Factory, 8-acre site, a hotel, housing, something that would really be a game changer for the village.
They also got a lot of money from the state in partnership with Ossining too to get that started.
Right. They have that $10 million grant. $10 million grant, which could be help jumpstart some of the infrastructural needs.
Right.
But still, the process was the same, where they put out an RFP just as Orangetown did, and they attracted. It was competitive, and they attracted like I said, a team that has some very ambitious plans. The thing about the difference here, though, between the Chair Factory and say Clarkstown and its TOD, the Chair Factory and Stony Point. These are town-owned pieces of land, and so the towns really can exert themselves more when it's on town or village-owned land. But when you have a situation like down in Palisades, this is a totally private transaction. HNA is it's the government, the Chinese government that owns that site, and the town of Orangetown wants to, was hoping, is still hoping that the best use can come out of this. But in the end of the day, they're really on the sidelines, and they are dependent on the strength of whether this development team will be able to come up with financing, will be able to follow through, and will be able to realize the vision that they've put forth, which also is quite ambitious and extensive. So we did obtain, as I said, their capital request, and it has some very interesting details. But it does, I guess, it opens the question as to whether or not this development is going to see the light of day. The town expresses its confidence that this deal will be consummated, and that this purchase price of $33 million has been reached, and that presumably this team will, I guess, get the financing that it needs, or find the investors that it's going to need for this. The capital request indicates that they're going to need $50 million to bring this property to life. So we're watching this story closely because it's a big parcel. It's important to Orangetown. It's important to the county, and mostly because of what we're talking about today. We're watching it because of the role that the town has played in tapping these developers, and just how that plays out at this 1-year anniversary. So interesting times here in the county.
Indeed. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff when it comes to that story.
Where do you think, Tina, the HNA thing will end up going, though?
It's really quite a mystery. It's interesting. Let's just be wonky and just look at some interesting numbers, okay? So when HNA bought the property from IBM, they paid $60 million for it. I think they might have overpaid. When there was a deal on the table about 2 to 3 years ago, a buyer from Brooklyn was willing to pay $40 million but left $8 million on the table in the way of a deposit, even though the deal went south. This team, they're two individuals who are from California. They themselves, don't have a history of a lot of development behind them. So clearly, they're going to be in need of partners somehow. But they have offered, from what we understand and have confirmed, $33 million for the property. This is a property that has really rapidly fallen into disrepair over the last 2 years since the pandemic started. The hotel shuttered. It's rather outdated. So it's in the what do they say? The details, the devil's in the details. It's in the numbers. It seems a high price tag for a property that is in such disrepair and is very dated and needs a total, I guess, gutting. The question, I guess, for savvy people who understand these topics is: this is a 106-acre site, $33 million. Is there some thought about parceling it off, selling it off, and building something else, potentially residential, even though the site is not zoned for that? So that's just something that I'm suggesting. I'm not saying that we have any reporting on that, but that is a possibility. We know that the site has been sued by O&R for non-payment of utilities, and we also know that there are back taxes. So it's a big parcel. Like I said, it's an important parcel. The town has inserted itself in its fate, but in the end of the day, it's privately owned. And so we're watching how all these factions come together to see what happens on this parcel. It's an interesting study, really, in development and town involvement and zoning. It's just an interesting case study if you're into that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you're into the sluggishness of town government and business, yeah, sure. Let's keep an eye on that one. And we know we're going to be keeping an eye on it. We know you're going to be keeping an eye on it at rcbizjournal.com. Not only that, but the developments up at Letchworth and how Clarkstown is doing, and even developments all across the county. People can find out more about that at rcbizjournal.com. And sign up for newsletters, and you can get all sorts of insight into the business world here in Rockland County. Tina Trasser, we thank you very much for joining us. We'll talk to you again on Monday next week, and have a good week.
Okay, you too.